everybody, and welcome back to Beyond the Whistle. Today is Season 4, Episode 3, and I'm Henry Lapin, joined by Rob Frangione, Thad Burley, and William Sexton, and we can not be more excited to bring you guys more information about the NFL. So Week 6 just ended, and a lot of big storylines. Rob, I know you're especially excited about Drake May's debut, even though it came with a loss, a blowout loss at that. Looks like you found your franchise guy. So, Rob, what can you tell me about Week 6?
Well, yeah, Drake May, future MVP, honestly. He might just go all out and win. He might just win Offensive Rookie of the Year this year. But, yeah, I thought it was a pretty good week. I didn't really get to see most of the 4:30 games, but from what I saw, I don't think I missed much. 1 o'clock games were pretty entertaining. Obviously with Ravens Commanders, that was a pretty fun game to watch. Titans Colts, didn't really expect that to be as good of a game as it was, but even still, it was pretty solid. Eagles Browns, not too bad. I'm going to go into Nick Sirianni and how much I just adore him later. But yeah, it's really what my thoughts on the game.
Yeah, so my key takeaways were just how bad New York is. New York sucks. Besides baseball, basketball, I guess hockey, but football is just awful. Giants lost 7-17, and on paper that doesn't seem like that bad of a loss, but Daniel Jones went back to looking like Daniel Jones. He's 1-14 on primetime, which is just awful. He hasn't thrown a touchdown in primetime in over 1,200 days. That's awful. The defense played well, not good enough to stop the Bengals from winning that game. And as for the Jets, they just look like a dumpster fire. Fired your coach, and Devontae Adams, maybe it brings him to a wild card, not to a Super Bowl. I don't know what that trade does besides make Aaron Rodgers seem like the actual owner of the Jets as well as the Bears. So, Thad, what do you think?
Yeah, Henry, you talk about, the New York struggles, but we also saw a lot of blowouts as we saw 5 games and 20-plus point wins. I think what surprised me the most were the first game being the Lions win over the Cowboys, because even though we probably expected the Lions to win that game, winning by 38 against any opponent in the NFL is surprising and honestly hard to do. We also saw the Buccaneers put up a big 51-27 win over their division rivals in the New Orleans Saints, with key offensive performances from Baker Mayfield, Sean Tucker, and Chris Godwin, as the Bucs broke 50 points, which was last seen in December of last season, in a 56-19 win for the Ravens.
Yeah. Will?
Let me touch up on that Lions game, obviously. We had a big blowout over the Dallas Cowboys, but at what cost, though? We lost probably
Your best player.
our best
of the year.
defensive player, maybe defensive player of the year could have been.
He's still
and it's
leading the league in sacks.
Still, yeah.
Sexton Lawrence at second.
He's only behind by half a second.
Yeah, as a nose tackle.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, and it's going to be a tragic loss for the Lions, but I think we could bounce back, maybe do a couple trades, but we'll talk about that later.
Yep.
Wink.
So now we're going to our Player of the Week award, and Rob, who do you got for that?
I'm going to go with the receiver for the Buccaneers, Chris Godwin, who's quietly having one of the best seasons in the NFL. I think he's actually ranked first in PPR leagues in fantasy football. He had 11 catches for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he really stepped up big for the Buccaneers when Mike Evans, as he does, got locked down by the Saints defense. They were pretty close at halftime, but he really helped them get past them. Like Thad, you were saying, helped them get that 51-point victory over the Saints.
I'm not taking any Mike Evans slander on here. Future Hall of Fame.
Oh, I love him. Absolutely. He's a great player, but
he doesn't get locked down.
Seems like every time he plays the Saints, he's nowhere to be found.
Yeah, Lattimore is out, though.
I agree with Rob on this one. He never shows up.
A little disappointed in that. So my Player of the Week is Caleb Williams. And when Caleb Williams becomes a future Hall of Fame quarterback, this is the game people are going to remember. 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 124.4 passer rating. He just looked incredible. And listen, he's had a rough start to the year. The Rookie of the Year odds have fallen way into Jaden Daniels' favor, but I think Caleb Williams, with a strong, pretty much, we're almost halfway, so second half push, he could definitely win Rookie of the Year. And he's definitely cementing himself as worthy of that number 1 overall pick. Thad?
Obviously we saw a lot of great offensive performances in those big wins, and like Rob, I'm going to take a Bucs player, Sean Tucker, running back 3.
He's pleased with how he did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, Rashad Waite not playing this week. He was out with a foot injury. He had to step up big, right? And Bucky Irving and Sean Tucker, they got it done on the ground. Sean Tucker he racked up 34.2 fantasy points. He went for 136 yards on 14 carries and a touchdown on the ground. and 56 receiving yards on 3 catches for another touchdown in the air, and a waiver claim for a lot of fantasy teams. So,
Will, who's your pick?
Yeah. Same pick as Rob, Chris Godwin. For myself and other fantasy owners, he was great on my team. Probably, yeah, he probably won me the my fantasy game. He scored 35.5 fantasy points. Some stats: he had 11 catches for 125 yards and scored 2 touchdowns, which helped him acquire the win over the Saints.
All right, now we're going from the highs of week 6 to the lows. And Rob, go rant. Just go.
If I swear, I'm sorry, guys, but my underachiever of the week is Nick Sirianni, who I am starting to take the opposite of a liking to.
buckle your seatbelts.
Oh, yeah. Get ready. It's about to get hot in here. They beat the Browns by 4. Is it that camera? They beat the Browns by 4 points. I mean, you're the Eagles. You were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. That should say enough for why he's there. I mean, he continuously refuses to use Saquon Barkley, even though he is by far their best weapon on offense. I mean, he proved through the first 3-4 weeks of the season that he can be that guy, and yet he's nowhere to be found. And I blame that entirely on Nick Sirianni for not using him. He gets bailed out. Excuse me. He gets bailed out by A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith week after week. I know A.J. Brown just came back, but I mean, he's played 2 games this year, and he's been, what's gotten them over teams that they should have easily beaten otherwise. Jalen Hurts has obviously regressed in 2022, and I mean, there's no one else that I can blame that on other than Nick Sirianni. I mean, the Browns blocked a field goal, and they took it back for a touchdown. I mean, that just shows undisciplined special teams, if you ask me. Is it Myles Garrett? Yes. Is he one of the best defensive players we've ever seen? Yes. But I still am going to put that on Sirianni. Then after the game, he yelled at his own fans after they beat one of the worst teams that we've ever seen, the Browns. And then he used his kids in the post-game press conference to essentially shield him from criticism. I mean, it doesn't get much lower than that. And like I said, I don't know how much of this is actually on him, but I choose to blame it entirely on Nick Sirianni. I hope they miss the playoffs.
Yeah, the bald head's not a good look. And I think that's pretty bad about the Browns when your quarterback has more assault cases than points put up in a week. That's not a great look either. Speaking of cases, Jerry Jones, my underachiever of the week. Him and the Cowboys lost 47-9. The Cowboys' leading passer, Dak Prescott, had 2 interceptions, 178 yards, and only completed about half of his completions. Their leading rusher had 25 yards. 25 yards in a full football game. That's sad. CeeDee Lamb, 8 catches, 89 yards, no touchdowns. But this is tied for the worst loss under Jerry Jones, 38 points. And after the last one in 2011, he fired Wade Phillips, the head coach, the day after that loss. Wade Phillips is now the coach of the San Antonio Brahmas in the UFL. Mike McCarthy should be coaching Japanese underwater football. He is such a bad
Guangdong Tigers?
Guangdong Tigers, exactly, Rob. Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones was complaining about the sunlight in the stadium that he designed. In the third quarter, at a 4 o'clock game, you could not see anything from one side of the field. There was just sun glaring down your face. Jerry Jones, you suck. You also snapped back on social media about a radio host who was trash talking you. Win some games, win the division. It's always our year, but it's not. Win a football game, and then you can talk trash. But that's it.
Agreed, Henry. You talked about the Giants' 17-7 loss earlier, which leads me into my underachiever this week, and I'm sorry for putting a Giants player in here.
Yeah.
But I have to put Greg Joseph, right? He only got 1 PAT on 1 attempt, but on both of his field goal attempts, he missed both of them. And, you just can't be doing that as a professional. Special teams play is critical in every game, and especially in those close games, right? And when a kicker falters, it really shifts the momentum, and it puts even more pressure on the defense and the offense to do well. His performance not only took off points off the scoreboard, but, really alters the Giants' approach in a game they really should be winning at home. So.
Yeah, and the fact they haven't fired him is just sad. Brian Daboll, Joe Shane.
I agree.
You guys, what are you doing? You're keeping a kicker that's just costing you games.
Same thing with Greg Zuerlein.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Greg the Leg is not looking good this year. Will, who's your pick underachiever?
I changed my underachiever last second. I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley. I had him on my team as my flex. He just didn't perform. He hasn't really been performing too well this season. especially against the Colts. He had 0 yards, 0 TDs. He had 1 carry, it looks like, and he only got .9 fantasy points, and it really hurt my team. But thanks to Chris Godwin, he
Still got
bounced
the win.
back.
Sort
but,
of evens out those
yeah,
points.
it evens out, but I'm definitely not going to be maybe trading him.
Yeah, Ridley not doing well. I'm sure his bookie is doing incredible.
Well, then he started, ranting about Will Levis and the Titans coaching after the game. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Calvin Ridley's bookie's absolutely having a year.
Oh, yeah.
So we saw a couple big trades this week in the NFL. We saw Devontae Adams for a third-round pick going back to Aaron Rodgers, his daddy, and the Jets. And we saw maybe a real shocker, Amari Cooper to the Bills. I personally love both those moves. The wide receiver market is crazy. Both of those guys went for the same rate that Jahan Dotson went for. He's a former first-round pick, but he still sucks. So this got us thinking, what are some mock trades that we could see happening in the NFL this year? So, Rob, what's a mock trade that you see happening before the deadline?
Well, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I think, obviously, with Aiden Hutchinson going down for the Lions, they're going to need someone to step in and fill up that, devastating loss in the pass rushing thing. So I'm just saying any pass rusher to the Lions, like Hassan Reddick, Zadarius Smith, who I'm sure you haven't heard of in years, and maybe even Max Crosby they can send a first-round pick over for.
Awesome.
But just anyone there to fill in that hole for the Lions.
Yep. So I'm going with Deontay Johnson to the Chiefs for a fifth-round pick and linebacker Cam Jones. I think Panthers, you're not winning any games this year. You're just trying to move on from Bryce Young. And I think the Chiefs absolutely need a wide receiver, especially with Rashee Rice down. I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be in the price range for the Chiefs, money and the picks you're going to have to give up for him. But Deontay Johnson has looked really good with Andy Dalton as his quarterback. If you can do that with Andy Dalton and Bryce Young as your quarterback, imagine what you could do in a better system, better line, better supporting cast, and the best quarterback in NFL history with Patrick Mahomes. The Panthers just going to get a fifth-round pick and a young linebacker Cam Jones, but that's all you need. An extra pick for a struggling organization is really all you need. So that mock trade.
Yeah, we talk about the Devontae Adams trade happened recently this past week, and I've seen news based on interest on many social media platforms, and I think it really makes sense if Mike Williams went back to the Chargers in LA, right? With him there, or with the Devontae Adams trade, Mike Williams won't really serve a great purpose there in New York. It's really only going to cost the Jets cap space if you think about it. And seeing that the Chargers show interest, I think the addition of a player like Mike Williams' caliber could really help in that Chargers offense and Justin Herbert. Which is why I really think we could see him back in LA, which would be awesome.
Well,
yeah, like Henry was saying, I think, different team, but I think the Saints should grab another wide receiver. I believe it might be DeAndre Hopkins, but it just depends if they have enough cap space, just like Henry said.
unless
They got to start.
Really sure, yeah.
They got to start letting people go at some point. Right?
Exactly.
unless the Texans just have to pay him the league minimum. I don't really know how. I mean, unless the Saints just pay him the league minimum for a veteran, I don't know how that trade would
And
happen.
there's no way that
They have zero
they're
money,
doing that.
zero money at all.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to see if someone like that get to the Saints because they sure as hell need him.
Yeah.
So
So I don't know about you guys. I'm sitting pretty good at fantasy, 4-2. I put up 160 points last week, but it was a great week. And some people are struggling a little more than me. So who do you think the people should start this week in fantasy, Rob?
well, I'm 4-2 in one league, 5-1 in another. My teams might be crumbling, but it's all right. In both leagues this week, I am starting Demario Douglas versus the Jaguars in London. Last week, he had a great connection with Drake May in his first start. That was versus a solid Texans defense. He finished with 6 catches on 9 targets for 92 yards and his first career touchdown. He's on a bit of a streak right now, and he really looks like he's starting to rise in that Patriots offense. I mean, I know it's not a very high bar to clear, but even still, it looks like he's starting to become that wide receiver 1 target. Jacksonville is a great matchup. Their defense is just terrible, so I think there's no good chance for a breakout, arguably even a better week than last week. Their secondary allows 290.7 yards a game. Do I think the Patriots are going to have that many yards? No, but I think they're going to have over 200. They've allowed 14 touchdown passes in the first 6 weeks, and that includes a game against the Browns in week 2. So I'm saying put him in as your flex and maybe even a wide receiver 2 if you're in like a 14-man league or something like that.
Yeah. So I'm going from one putrid offense to another. I'm starting Chase Brown of the Bengals. They're playing the Browns this week, and Browns' rush defense has not been good. they shut down Saquon Barkley, but that was really Nick Sirianni shutting down Saquon Barkley with that play calling. But Chase Brown, the past 3 games, has over 14.4 points with 10 carries a game, 2 catches a game as well. Zach Moss has looked horrible for the Bengals. He's no longer the RB1, and Chase Brown is the overall running back 22 on fantasy football this year. That's ahead of a lot of guys that went even in the first and second round. So Chase Brown, you should absolutely be a running back 1 or 2 on everyone's fantasy football team. Who should we start?
Yeah, just like you, Henry, I'm going to start a Bengals offensive player. I mean, super easy to do so against the 1-5 Browns in that AFC North matchup. But nonetheless, I'm starting T. Higgins, right? He faces up against a Browns team which ranks 23rd in the league against the pass. In the past 2 weeks, he's scored 44 fantasy points in total. Coming back from injury, I think he's looked very strong in that offense, and I think that continues in Week 7. So.
Will?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with another Lions pick here, but I think a lot of people have them. Don't give me that look.
Oh, come
Go
on.
Yeah. Well, I had another pick before, but I just think I'm just going to go with Jameson Williams to start for this week. I think a lot of people have him starting already. I
He's
just
sitting
think he's
for me.
going to.
I'm sitting him.
I think he's going to perform against that Vikings defense. I mean, they have some great. I don't think they have like the best secondary. I think they have.
Harrison Smith is going to break every bone in his body this week, mark my words.
Well, we'll see if he can.
Well,
catch
we don't
him.
wish for that.
If he can
Yeah,
catch
yeah.
him, if he catch him, I think he's going to get a lot of deep targets. Get some good touchdowns, and it'll be a fun game.
You know, he was actually on the waivers in one of my dad's leagues, so I picked him up for him. And I mean, that's
Jameson Williams.
I'm telling you, I had no
waivers.
idea. My dad's like, all right, who should I pick up? He's showing me his league. I'm like, and I see, is that Jameson Williams? I see, because I see Jay Williams. I don't know why I'm thinking Javante in the running back
Probably, yeah.
receiver category. But no, it's Jameson Williams. I'm like, all right, I don't know what he's doing on waivers, but you got to get him right now. And
Interesting.
it's one of those leagues where you have to like actually pay money to pick dudes up. So we put in $10 next to
yeah.
you.
Makes sense.
What do you know? We got him.
Well, someone dropped Travis Etienne for Kadarius Toney in my league, so that was
What's he
certainly-
building in there?
I don't know, but I kind of like what he's thinking. I want what he's on. So, Rob, who's the sit this week?
I'm going with Bucky Irving versus the Ravens. Ravens defense, no team has allowed fewer yards per game on the ground than them. And now he's sharing a backfield with Rashad White, who, yes, I think he's coming back from a foot injury this week, and Sean Tucker, who broke out last week and is currently pleased with his performance. Ravens defense allows 12.3 points per game to running backs. That's just every running back in that system. I mean, that is just, I'm not expecting, over 6 points from Bucky Irving. And yeah, I think the passing attack is going to take over, just like it did last week.
Yeah, so I'm going from one backfield to another, 49ers backfield. I am sitting Jordan Mason this week, the savior of my fantasy football team. I have to sit this week. He only had 9.2 points last week. Of course, got injured with an AC joint sprain in that right shoulder of his. He's been limited at practice. He's been doing a lot of running back drills. But we saw Isaac Guerrero look good last week, 9.9 points. He should have scored a touchdown, but he went down at the 5-yard line. He slid down to save the clock. And I think Jordan Mason, if he plays this week, he's only going to get a limited number of snaps. He's also playing the Chiefs, who happen to have a great defense, really strong defensive line. So I think Jordan Mason, he's not going to get a lot of carries. Definitely no goal line carries to avoid that contact to his upper body. I think Isaac Guerrero is going to get a majority of the carries. Jordan Mason, just stash him on the bench this week.
My sit is probably one we don't hear that often. I know they're 5-0, but I'm sitting Mahomes, right? He's been very mediocre this year in fantasy, averaging 14.2 points per game. And for the quarterback position, that's mediocre, right? I'd continue to sit him if you have a viable alternative. And really, nothing is convincing me for him to be a start in any fantasy lineups, as he also faces a 49ers defense that's only allowed just 2 quarterbacks to score more than 12.8 fantasy points. So
I mean, as great as a quarterback as he is, he's just not really a great fantasy player.
No,
Really?
Last week I
Yeah.
started Justin Fields over him.
I've had Jaden Daniels the
That's-
entire year.
I would do that.
Holmes hasn't started a game for me.
yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Will-
maybe week 1, but I'm gonna go with Brandon Ayuk. I'm done starting him. He's horrible this year for all fantasy owners.
What happened to him, man?
I don't even
Money
know.
went
He
to his
just
head.
he does not have I don't know. He's just not playing well.
Yeah.
Oh.
He doesn't get any targets. He gets 5 fantasy points per week. I'm just I'm benching him or trading him. Maybe I can get good trade. If
It might be
people
too
don't know.
late to get
Yeah, I
him.
know.
Too late to trade.
I know. But yeah, I'm going Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, he's looked terrible. A lot of the 49ers not getting the target share they wanted.
But I could trade him in the league I'm 6-0 with all my rowing friends. They
Oh, Eric Johnson, is he in that one?
Yep. And,
Wow, you
let me.
got him to do
He
fantasy?
got his first round. He actually took Jaden Daniels.
How many people are in your league?
It's like 8, but they do not know football.
So that's good for you.
What's your record?
Is Luke Pitaro in that league too?
Yeah.
Wow.
6-0.
Dear Lord.
6-0.
God.
Wow.
Luke Bataro, I think, got 20 fantasy points.
That's solid performance.
I played a dude in the cross country league who scored -4 points. You know Nico? That
Nico.
I have no idea who he is. His name's Nico.
Nikias?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
-4.
Dude had -4 points.
-4.
Everyone was either hurt or on a bye, and the only person that played was the Bengals defense.
I mean, he
which
just
the
doesn't
Ravens-
care. He just doesn't
Yeah,
care.
he hasn't checked
Yeah.
his league. He hasn't checked his matchup.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I wish I could not care about fantasy football like him.
I think scoring
I
negative points
wish.
is more impressive than like putting up 200.
I wish I could.
How do you do that?
I wish I could just do my homework on a Sunday, but it's too
Yeah.
it's too convincing to watch.
You have to try to get that low.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. So thank you for watching this week's episode of Beyond the Whistle. I'm Henry Lapin, Rob Frangione, Thad Burley, Will Sexton. We'll see you next week with another Will Levis moment and hopefully not a 25th for Deshaun Watson. We'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.